Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. Hello and welcome. My name is Charles Johnson, host of It's a Controls Problem. And today we have a very special guest here, Mr. H.V.A.C. himself, Tony Mormino. So welcome, Tony. And we're so thankful that you were able to take time to come out and do this podcast.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. So for those of you who do not know who Tony is, Tony, would you like to give an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So been in the HVAC industry, commercial HVAC industry for about 25 years. Started with one of the big manufacturers for the first 10 years. And then the second 10 years, I was part owner and operator of a HVAC rep firm in Jacksonville, Florida. And then the last 6 years, I've lived here in North Carolina, where I work for a company called Air Control Concepts. And I'm the host of our podcast called H.V.A.C. TV. And we also have a YouTube channel. So I get to do something that's been kind of a dream of mine. I love to teach and I love to give back and I love to try to educate. And so I have a great job. And thank you for having me on the show to talk about HVAC or whatever we're going to talk about today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. As a fellow educator, it's really important to continue to get the message out to the younger generations and even to a point some of the older generations, because I feel that everyone is a lifelong student and not everyone knows everything, and there's always something to learn every single day. So that's my philosophy. But speaking of HVAC TV, I know that some people may not be familiar with that, but so can you actually share the origin of that story? Like, what sparked the idea of your initial vision for creating that platform?
Oh, that's a great question and a good topic. I love to talk about that. So it was not my brainchild. I started doing YouTube videos, about 6 years ago on HVAC, and I did a couple videos and they did okay. I was shocked that anybody would watch them, to be honest with you, but they were getting thousands of views. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Around the same time, COVID hit, and my boss at the time called me and said, hey, we were worried about getting in front of engineers during this COVID thing. What can we do online? Can we do like some Zoom meetings or something like that to get in front of engineers? And I said, yeah, let's try it. So he had known I had a little online experience, so he was calling to ask me to help the company as a favor, right? So I was like, sure, I'll do that. So we started doing these Zoom meetings online, teaching HVAC for PDH credits for engineers. And at first during COVID, it was real novel, and it was, oh my gosh, this is so cool, because no one had ever done it before, which is surprising when you think about it today, right? But so we did that. Then that kind of crashed because after a month, people were like, I'm so sick of Zoom meetings. I want to die, right? Like, so we started looking at other ways to get in front of people. LinkedIn Live came out just about that time. So we started playing around with that. And that turned out to be a real fun way to get in front of folks. So we came up with a name. We called it H.V.A.C. TV. And then we started the YouTube channel and we started the podcast. That's how it started, and we had like no plan with it other than we're trying to get in front of our customers. Now it's grown into, for our company, like a national brand, and we use it to help promote our brand, to help give back to HVAC community, and to help promote the brands of the products we rep.
So, the thing about podcasts, or especially like, social media, especially when you're talking about during COVID, that really became, that platform really started to boom, you had like Twitch and some other things like that for streaming platforms. But then all of a sudden, when no one had anything else to do, well, that became all the rage. And so, but it definitely did have a monotony about it to pretty much, yeah, like you said, people just became kind of tired of it, and they wanted to go back to some sense of normalcy instead of being where they were. So I'm really glad. Really glad that that actually worked out for you, especially when you started on LinkedIn Live. And I've had a few LinkedIn accounts and really haven't done a whole lot with it until probably the last year or so, I believe. But obviously, starting any venture like definitely comes with its challenges, and you already talked about some of those hurdles there. But really, in some of those times where it seemed tough, what kept you motivated to continue to do what you needed to do?
That's a great question. First of all, I'm not a natural born online presenter or speaker. As a matter of fact, to do it originally in front of my peers and my friends and the people who knew me it was it was terrifying to say the least. I mean, my heart was beating out of my chest. I was sweating in the original videos. You could see, obviously I was not comfortable doing it at all. But I don't know about you, but sometimes in life you're being pulled to do something even though you're afraid to do it. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I just felt like it was right, and I felt like it was a way for me to help give back to my company and a way to grow, not just grow like from a sales standpoint, but to grow personally, and I've learned that when you're being pulled in a direction, but fear is stopping you to grow, to overcome that fear is growth. It's the way we grow as humans. It doesn't matter what area you're in. It could be HVAC, it could be controls, it could be plumbing. But so I think the pull of just like, this is right. There's something about this that is the direction we should go. That's what keeps me going. Now I love it. Like the fear and all that anxiety, all that's gone. It's just a pure joy of mine. It's funny you introduced me as Mr. HVAC. I appreciate that. People think I know a lot more than I know because I have a lot of very important guests on the show who are a lot smarter than me. So I know a little about a lot of things and a medium amount about a medium amount of things, but I'm not real deep on a lot of the subjects. So what keeps me going now is I have a passion for it. I love the creating content aspect of it. I love to be able to give back, and I love these tools today. I love the online tools. So that's what keeps me going.
I think that you definitely hit the nail on the head. It is part of some of my story becoming, I became a certified trainer, and I've always wanted to become a certified developer for Niagara because I like you, like I know, so, like there are some things I'm really strong in, then there are some things I'm not so strong in, and then there are things I'm really weak in, and so pushing yourself, I think, is extremely important because I think sometimes you don't really know your actual limitation until you're pushed to that limit, and then once you realize, oh wow, like I've really got that, and then like as you pointed to, it gives you that confidence, and then like, oh, I can knock this out of the park. It's not a big deal. And then like, as you surround yourself with stronger people, you also gain a lot of that knowledge. And so it's, at times whom you surround yourself with, it actually makes you appear stronger than what you actually could be. And so then developing that presence, in my opinion, I think is really good because then people will respect what you say. People will really give you a good listen. And then you take a little bit of the insight that everyone else is giving you, and then you actually put your own spin on it to really come up with a good product and a good vision. So I really that really resonated with me. What you said, I'm like, yeah, I really became that, and as part of development, I was like, man, I can actually start doing some of this stuff. And so like coming up with a lot of like you envision something and then it comes to fruition, and you just see like the beauty of your of the labor of your fruit or the fruit of your labor, really is a good to know. But speaking of highs, what are some of the most exhilarating highs or moments of success that you had? Are there any like milestones that you can point to with HVAC TV?
Yeah. So last year I was, to my shock, I was nominated for HVAC Tactical is a brand that has award ceremonies every year at the AHR show. And this year it was in Orlando. So I was nominated for a category they don't tell you. You don't really know until you get there what you're nominated for or if you win. And I was nominated for Influencer of the Year, HVAC Influencer of the Year, and actually won. And I got up and I spoke in front of, did an acceptance speech in front of 400 people. Now that's another one of those things that was like, I've never done that before. And speaking online is one thing, speaking in front of a room full of 400 people. So when we got in there, I was praying like, please God, let me go first. Let me go first. And of course I was dead last. So I was sitting there for 90 minutes, like, nervous about if I had to get up there. So anyway, that would be a highlight from HVAC success standpoint. And I could tell you too, I love this topic of success because my definition of success has changed over the years as I've gotten older. I'm not super old. I'm in my mid 50s, but I used to define success by some sort of achievements in terms of dollars or sales or this business, that business, these kind of things. And I've learned for me, success today is more of doing the thing you should be doing and not letting fear stop you from doing it. And to just be happy with that and be content and be fulfilled with what you're doing. And in that sense, I have a lot of success today because I truly feel that way for one of the first times in my life. Because I've had successful businesses. I've been a successful sales guy, but there was times where I was just so miserable, but I kept doing it out of fear because I was scared to like make a change and I was scared to not make as much money. But anyway, you mentioned the word success, so I had to jump in there with that kind of a personal take on that. So
it is great. Like knowing that you have just a sense of accomplishment. And as you're right, it's not necessarily about money or fame or anything like that, but just know that you're doing the right thing, that you, like you said, fear does hold a lot of people back. And once you let go of that fear, I think the possibilities and the potential that people have can be limitless. I really wish people would just be willing to take more of a chance, but taking that chance is hard, as you know, because the unknown is the biggest fear that anyone can have. And, that limits a lot of people because they want to play it safe. And sometimes playing it safe is not the correct way. Playing it safe can keep you honed in. And sure, while you are comfortable at that point, you don't know what you can actually achieve. So I agree that completely. And congratulations on your award, by the way. That's an outstanding accomplishment for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I was completely blown away and honored, by the way, with the people and a lot of the folks in that awards ceremony are blue collar tradespeople, and they're doing the real work. Like they're doing the hard work. And they were showing some of the pictures of the installations, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. Like some of it looks like a piece of art. They look so nice. But anyway, I just wanted to comment. I'm was very grateful to win that. So.
Oh, I think it's amazing. Let's and those are things you're going to remember the most. Matthew and I were at AHR this year, and I go every year since I've been employed with the company that we work for. It's been quite interesting to see how everything goes. So I definitely am looking forward to more AHRs as well. And with Matthew and I with the podcast, we're hoping one day we make the pavilion one day. It's baby steps.
Yeah.
We're kind of just doing this as a way to feel it out. Literally, we just in October of last year, we are at a nice little I don't know if you call it a dive bar or Matthew, I don't know, whatever you call it, but it's called The Ship, and it's in downtown Kansas City. Great food, great ambiance. But we were just sitting there drinking, and we were like, you know what? We're gonna do a podcast. It's called It's a Controls Problem, and literally we've just been kind of just doing this and acquiring guests and gaining some kind of recognition, and whether or not it truly picks up, I don't really care about that. I mean, sure, that's great, but you know what? The fact is, as long as we continue to do something that we're enjoying, then we're going to continue to do it. And when it no longer becomes fun, well, that's when the train stops. So we're gonna keep riding the train as long as we can.
Love it. I love that strategy too, because so many people, including myself, to this day, I could overthink things so much. And, the strategy comes in the doing, right? Like it doesn't come in the whiteboarding. And I have many meetings with some companies are billion-dollar industry leading companies, and they've got the whiteboard and the this, and they're trying to do more online content. And B2B businesses struggle with the online content because it's not in their wheelhouse, and there's a number of reasons for that, but basically they struggle with it. And I'm like, guys, first of all, take your whiteboard and get off, just erase it. Just you got an eraser, just get rid of it. Start posting stuff that's of value to your potential customer. That's all you have to do. And you can do that right now. You can do it right now when you hang up the thing. You don't need a whiteboard, and you'll find what works and doesn't work. And like you said with this podcast, it may go for 30 years. You may have a guest on that's like, you ought to do blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you got a new thing and you're like, well, we never thought of that. And it takes you in another direction. So it's in the doing that all of that happens. So hats off to you guys for starting. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on, because, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and we've had so many people come on in the early time. So I try to give back when I can and help others too. So I don't know if this will help you not having me on here, but if it does, that'd be great.
Well, regardless of that, we just really appreciate you taking the time. I told Matthew, I was like, I want him on the show. We need to get him on the show. Like, to me, just having people like you that come out, like, really make a difference. And again, it's not really about influencing, the people podcast, but, there are people that just want to know about your story. So they may listen to you, they may not, but at least now we give them another avenue to get to know you a little more. And so, yeah, no, absolutely. We are completely grateful to have you here. There's no doubt in your HVAC career, because I've been paid to do this for 24 years now, but actually I got started when I was a lot younger. My dad actually got me into controls. So I was a little kid going around the controls office, and I eventually started learning stuff. But yeah, I've been doing it a long time as well. And I'm sure that you have. I'm sure that you've run into some pretty colorful situations. So on that note, can you share like a funny or particularly memorable anecdote from your time in the field that still makes you chuckle?
Oh my gosh. I'll have to think about that for a minute. I do have one, but I wanted to say, it's funny you said your dad got you, and my dad got me into the business too. He was a residential contractor, and I went to school for engineering, but I always felt like I wanted to go into sales, and I ended up in HVAC sales, probably because of my dad. And I actually did a LinkedIn poll yesterday. I'll try and pull it up here while we're talking, but the question was, how did you get into the business? Was it a family member, a friend? You wanted to work with your hands or other? And I think the majority of them said a family member. So it's funny how we pass this thing down. And now my oldest son, Nate, he's 18. He just started as a service tech apprentice, and he's going to college for HVAC. So it's funny how we get this in our family and it just kind of rolls downhill. But I don't know. A funny story: when I was new in HVAC, I was working for a large manufacturer, like I said, and they sold big centrifugal chillers. So I remember this particular customer was a giant hospital, and they needed a refrigerant monitor filter. So inside refrigerant monitors, if I remember right, there's a little filter in there, and sometimes they go bad or they need to be changed. So I had this in my car, and I went out there and I went to the utility plant and the big chiller plant. And I walked in there, and the guy was on the phone, or he was doing something. I was like, well, I'll just change this out for him. I'll be a nice guy. I've seen the manual. It looks pretty easy. So I opened up the panel for the refrigerant monitor. Well, if you do that, the alarms go off. Like the whole plant, I remember all these alarms went off, and like the chiller shut down, and he comes screaming out, "What are you doing?" He used probably some colorful language there. He's like, "Man, don't ever walk in here and touch stuff. You don't know what you're doing." So that was my first lesson. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to get fired. I was like a brand new guy in the field. And so, if you're new, be careful what you touch. That's the moral of that story.
100%. Having had a lot of experience underneath my belt, when I went to go work for, the very first controls company I did, my dad also worked for that company. And so it was a pneumatic over DDC, and the guy didn't run any of the tubing. at all. And I called my dad. I was like, hey, he didn't do any of this. He's like, well, son, just go to the store, grab pneumatic tubing, and start running. I'm like, but that's okay. All right, I'll go do it. I was like, well, yeah. Someone's like, I don't know why it's not working. Well, I can tell you right now. They're like, it's like Sling Blade, ain't got no gas.
Right.
That was the big thing there. So fun fact, yeah, you right now currently 33% of the people on your poll have said family member so far. Although it also interesting, 25% people just wanted their hands to work, or wanted hands-on work instead. So I think that's kind of interesting too. To see that. So yeah, I was like, wow, you're like, oh no, I can pull it up right here. I've got 6 monitors I can go with. So yeah, so
every
33%.
time I do one of those polls, I'm shocked at the answers. That's a good. By the way, if you're listening and you're on LinkedIn and you want to get an answer to something, it's a good way to do it. It's a lot of fun. It's engaging, and I always make the D other comment below, because then it gets a whole other conversation going in the comments, which is really where a lot of the fun is. So, little tip there.
Yeah. It's oh no, I mean absolutely. 24% currently have said other. So I think that's an overwhelming number. That actually surprises me more than the family. The family isn't as surprising because it can be generational, but the other is the looking at some of the other ones here, and actually a lot of the people, you and I guess some have a lot of the same followers or connections. So I see a lot of the people that I know have actually answered that. So I think that's awesome. But you being in the industry for so long, that HVAC is a trade that demands constant learning and adaptation. And so, what are some of the significant shifts that you have witnessed over the industry across the years, and how has HVAC TV evolved to address those changes?
That's a great question. On the general topic of education, I think you're right. Like, I'm shocked because sometimes after 25 years, I'll post something that I'm like, oh, I'm an expert at this, I know of it, and I'll post it and I'll get comments like, that's not really right, or that's not really how. I'm like, oh my gosh, how embarrassing, So it's like you never stop learning, and then you forget stuff, and you had to look it up. Here's a hilarious story. So the other day, I was trying to figure something out. I can't remember what it was, but I Googled it. How do you blah, blah, blah? It was some kind of equation we use. And I Googled it, and what popped up was a video of me teaching it a year ago. So I had taught this a year ago, and I'd already forgotten it. Of course, I could have taught it last week and forgot it too. Like, that's how my brain works sometimes. But so the education is just huge. I mean, it's like, and to me, I always say, start with the basics. And if you never leave the basics, you don't have to go back to them. Mm-hmm. And a lot of folks that are, and I think men are the worst at this. We think we know everything, and we don't want to admit when we have a question or we're wrong. But
yep.
Constantly I'm learning new things online and social media. So as far as the way things have changed, I think really the industry's in a bad spot in terms of education. I don't think a lot of companies invest enough in education. I could be wrong. That's just my opinion. I happen to work for one that does invest a lot of time and money in educating the sales team and the local service techs of our contractors and things like that. But it's just, to me, everything is so complicated. I don't know how contractors keep up with all the different types of equipment, the different types of controllers. And now you've got the whole A2L thing coming out, and you've got what refrigerant can I use here? And what do I do with this? It's so much, it's so confusing. So if there's been any change, in my opinion, that's been difficult, it's been that things have gotten a lot complex. There's a lot of regulations and stuff like that put a lot of strain on the industry, and very hard for the contractors and guys on the front lines and gals to keep up with the all that. What you say? What do you think about that, Charles?
Yeah, I agree. Like, first off, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of companies do not value training. They find that, they think that real world experience, is the best training that you can have. And while I agree in some aspects, we learned by baptism by fire. And that's how that's how anyone old school really did it, right? So obviously there are schools and trainings for HVAC, mechanical, and residential, and then there are very few ways to actually learn controls in a true classroom environment. And so, like, even even in the people that come into my class, what I'll find is they're getting thrown into a project like the next week, and so the company like expects them to be like a rock star when they leave my class, and I'm like, well, hold on now, I'm like, you literally just got your driver's license,
Mm-hmm.
like that's it. You are not you're not a rock star. And what I've done, Tony, is my students actually get access to a Google Drive. And so this Google Drive contains a list of contains like a bunch of PowerPoint presentations that I've done through like some YouTube stuff and just some personal things. They get the Honeywell Gray Book, so the engineering guide for building automation controls. They get Francisco Valentine's BAS inputs and outputs. I give them tools to tune PID loops. I think I have like 120 different videos on there about all things Niagara, and now I need to really kind of work on controls for them as well, because the younger generation, I know some people have probably heard me say this before, they can figure out the how, but they don't know the why. And to me, the
Mm.
why is significantly more important than the how. Like, we can teach you the how, that's easy, but the why, remembering that is, I think, is really important. And when you mentioned, like, hey, you Googled something to find it, and you found yourself, on a video. I'll go back to my videos as well, and I'm like, all right, what did I do here again? I'm like, oh, okay. I'm glad that past Charles is there to help future Charles to keep
Right.
him, because, like, the more that the more experience you have, you'll forget more than anyone could ever know. Like, when you realize like how much you have forgotten, like, you don't even know what you have forgotten until it comes up there. So it's like, oh, I can dust this old book off here and get started with that. But I do wish that companies value training more. But I think the problem with that is liquid capital, right? Some people want to see a return on the investment very quickly, and that's not really the case. And sometimes even those people that work for a contractor, that may not be their final home. So now all of a sudden they've gained this piece of knowledge, but now they're going to go to their final home, but that's not really beneficial for the company. But yeah, like, even going with equipment like modular chillers, or new VRF systems, and new ways to do integration. It is a lot to learn. And so, like, I wish that, to me, like, I keep a personal library that I have. So, like, when I run into something new, it goes into a drive somewhere. I have a bunch of them that I need to eventually consolidate, but, like, that kind of stuff is super important to keep, because, again, you are going to forget. But the more that, I think that the more that we as a whole, I mean, just as a not just you and I, but I mean we as in the community, if we can strive to help out the community in shoring up those holes in knowledge, and having more open resources without a lot of costs involved, I think would really be beneficial, because some of the things are the barrier of entry for training is cost. Like, non-partners for us pay 3,100, and you have other classes that are charging 35 or even higher. So that's a lot. And then, like, taking like a week's worth of wages, and then, heaven forbid, they have to travel, so that's hotel costs, food, etc. So it ends up being like a $10,000 investment per person, per training class. And I think, like, a lot of that from a company perspective is just it's hard for them to swallow. But I think if they take a step back and understand, sure, I'm investing in this person now, and sure, they may or may not work out for the company, but you know what? we're doing the right thing by helping them improve themselves. Because maybe if they're happier with their work environment, they'll continue to stay with the company. But yeah, there's so many things that people need to learn. And I like to tell people, you know, grab three things and learn those three things really, really, really well. And then the rest of it will eventually fall into place. And then those three things are going to be the basis of your foundation to, like, oh, I can actually, this kind of works like this. And then you learn, then you go down that rabbit hole and so forth. So I don't know if you agree with that, but that's the way I kind of feel.
No, I definitely agree with that. 100%. We encourage engineers to go to, this is what popped in my head, is we encourage engineers to go to factory tours with us because it's a great way to learn the equipment and to understand different panel constructions, hot gas reheat, dehumidification, et cetera. But it's really hard to get them to go these days because it's an expense for them,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they have to take vacation days. But yeah, the idea of education, I'm with you 100%. And the other side of that too is, as a company, if you want to grow your business, the best way to do that is to help educate and provide value to the community. That's the best way, in my opinion. It's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to do content too, as you guys know. If you provide content that's valuable, you'll grow your brand and you'll hopefully turn into some more business, or maybe not. Maybe you're just helping some other people. But yeah, the education thing is huge.
Yeah. Speaking of this, obviously you work in the commercial industry, but do you see the landscape of HVAC evolving with the rise of smart building and connected devices? And if you do, what opportunities or challenges do you foresee?
I don't see that very much. That's not to say
Mhm.
it's not happening. In my
Yeah.
world, I'm more on the equipment side.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's important. I think it's going to happen. I think, like anything else, it needs to be the one of the big sides while we're talking about education and this kind of thing is, like, from the HVAC equipment standpoint, and every generation says this and then they come out with some new invention. But for right now, we've kind of maximized the efficiency of a lot of the equipment we use: package rooftop units, air cooled chillers, water cooled chillers. We're at the point where adding metal to it or more heat exchange surface, it's not there's no ROI to do that. You have to add 30% more cost to get a 0.00% increase in efficiency, right? So it doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
So we're kind of maxed that out. So the next evolution, I think, in terms of the built environment is the building as a whole. How is it being run? How is insulation? What kind of windows are you using? What direction is it facing? All this kind of thing. Like, and a lot of that happens today, but, like, what happens is you build this building, you put all these controls and these smart things in there, and then the maintenance guy shows up. He might not even know what half the stuff is. He's
Hmm.
not getting trained properly, or the guy gets trained and then he leaves, and then some other guy comes in. He doesn't even know what's going on, right? You got this damper stuck open at 100% because they had a building pressure issue one day 5 years ago. So you're bringing in all this outdoor air, and it's never warm and it's never dehumidified. So, I mean, I think from that standpoint, will smarter controls help with that? I think absolutely. But as you and I have talked about, it has to be intentional and people have to be trained on it. So what do you probably see more of that than I do?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that someone asked me about, I did a class in Florida last week, and someone asked me a very interesting question, and it's actually about whether or not, because you just mentioned dehumidification, and obviously, typically, we look for just relative humidity as a whole, but he asked me about what if we went to sequence of operations where we maintain dew point rather than trying to maintain relative humidity. And what I kind of thought was interesting, and after I thought about it for a while, because I found it to be an intriguing question, because I had not been asked about that before. Because I've maintained, dew point. I think the only time that I actually had to maintain dew point was an archaeological exhibit,
Hmm.
where you want more moisture to be put into the ground than in the air. So you always want the ground. So you always want the ground to draw moisture. And I think you know from even like a basic HVAC thing, like let's say like a small unit ventilator or a fan coil unit, right? Like, a lot of sequences you'll see is you want the chill water valve to maintain, to maintain space temperature. And actually, I don't ever do it that way. I use like the space temp as more of a T-stat function to enable heating or cooling, and then I just let I just let the chill water valve maintain supply temp, because obviously, I care more about dew point there. But
Mm-hmm.
what do you think about potentially, the obviously the benefits of maintaining dew point in a building, because the wall will mostly, around the wall will be mostly around 100% humidity. So, the idea of maintaining dew point, could I guess really save the light, could I guess increase the lifespan of a building without a lot of renovation. So some things like that, do you think, from that as a whole, do you think big manufacturers will work on some of those trends to build in controls like that specifically?
Yeah. So, by the way, there's a great YouTube channel called H.V.A.C. TV, and we've done many videos on relative humidity versus dew point. That's actually very common. It's a good question, and we get that all the time, especially because we do a lot of dehumidification equipment. So relative humidity is not a good indicator of the actual amount of moisture in the air because it's relative to the dry bulb temperature. So, for example, on a very hot day, it could be 95 degrees out, very humid, but the relative humidity could be 55, 60%, right? Like, but if that same day, at 50 degrees, the relative humidity could be at 100%. But there's way more humidity in the air at that lower relative humidity state point. It's a little hard to explain audibly, but if you look at a psychrometric chart, and we go through a lot of that stuff on our website or on our YouTube channel. But anyway, the point is, dew point is a much better indicator of the actual amount of moisture in the air. Now, when you're just doing comfort cooling and you're in the 70-ish degrees for temperature, it just so happens 50 to 55% RH is comfortable. It's fine. So in those terms, to measure RH and controlled RH is a great way to do it because it's easy, it's less expensive than doing dew point, and everybody's familiar with it. The problem you get into is if you have like we do a lot of surgery suites, okay? And in surgery suites, they like to keep it really cold.
Yep.
Now, cold air has a higher relative humidity, but it has a very low absolute humidity. Okay. People don't understand that. So if you put a sensor in a surgery suite and it's 62 degrees and it's 70% RH, it's actually very dry in there. Its relative humidity is high because it's relative to the temperature in the air. So in those cases, we always control the dew point. And we're doing outdoor air dehumidification. We do a lot of what's called makeup air units or 100% outdoor air units. We're always looking at the dew point of the air to initiate the dehumidification sequence. So it's good. It's a good exercise to learn the difference between those two. So when you come across these, for us are very common scenarios, but for some folks in HVAC, it might be kind of rare.
Yeah, in the South, it's all about dehumidification.
Yep.
It's actually against code in the area that I'm in, that like as far as like economizer, we can't just use straight dry bulb.
Yep.
We have to, we have to take that into consideration. But yeah, I kind of thought it was just a very interesting, an interesting topic. And the thing that I also kind of I thought about for this person, I was like, well, what kind of equipment do you have, right? So like it's easy for someone to say, hey, do XYZ, but you have to, I think at times, and I don't know if you agree with this, I think you have to look at the equipment, the equipment that's actually in the building at the time, whether or not they even have, the capability of achieving, those sequences based upon, or achieving that level of efficiency based upon, the age of the building and the equipment in there.
100%. By the way, you're in Charleston, is that right?
Yep.
It's the most humid place on the planet, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm from Florida, and I remember I went to some AHR thing there one year, and I remember it was like August, and So I'm in Florida. I drive up to Charleston, and remember telling somebody, I was like, "Oh my God, what is up with the humidity here?" And he was like, "Welcome to the South." And I said, "Man, I'm from Florida." I
Yeah.
just couldn't believe the amount of moisture in the air. But yeah, so that's a great point you bring up, and that again goes back to the education, especially with the consulting engineers, to understand if you're trying to achieve a certain goal in a space, what's your intent and
Hmm.
what are the tolerances? Intent and tolerances is what we look at in terms of temperature and humidity. You better make sure the equipment you specify has the hardware and the software to do that, or you'll never be able to do it. And we've been to many, many job sites where we walk in and the contractor's like, "Man, it's humid in here." And I'm like, "Well, where's your humidity sensor?" He's like, "We don't have one." I said, "Well, you're not even measuring humidity. How are you going to control it? And then do you even have the right features to control it?" And then you got to go look around and figure out what they got. But if it's not designed that way initially, it's really hard to turn a unit into a dehumidification unit. And, especially if it's an older building and the construction's not tight, it's a challenge. It's tough. And especially in the South. I mean, if you're in the South
Hmm.
and you have a makeup air unit on a school, and
Yeah.
that thing trips off, you can feel it in like a minute. You can feel it. Am I right? I mean, it's
Yes.
crazy. The humidity
Oh
there is
yeah.
just insane. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, walking through schools, like like all of a sudden, like a unit shut off, and
yep.
like it instantly hits you. And you're right. Like for example, in Charleston, it just rained. I think like 2.5, 3 inches. In about an hour and a half. And so we constantly we never. And by the way, people in Charleston don't consider Florida the South. I mean, I know technically it is the South, but like we normally are. I mean,
Totally.
I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, but
Right.
so they call me a Yankee, even though technically we are below the Mason-Dixon line. I'm not going to argue with people in the South here because they have other reasons to be angry, which is fine.
That's right.
But
That's right.
but no, I agree. Like when you walk into something, you just know you're like, oh, this is going to be a miserable day. Um, I had someone where they it was a chill water system and it had a decoupler in there, and they were having issues with keeping the chillers on, and I was like, guys, there's a decoupler here, right? Yeah. I'm like, where's your flow meter or even a flow switch? Well, why would you have one? And I'm like, okay, well let's go ahead and talk about why we have a decoupler in the first place. And after I went through the whole thing, they're like, oh, yeah, we didn't think about that. I'm like, where are the engineered drawings for this? And I look and I don't see anything on it. And so I actually called the engineer, and it was just an engineer fresh out of school. And I was like, um, we didn't have no one else check that. And like sometimes you see that kind of thing, you're like, wow.
Mhm.
Another thing that a lot of people don't understand are design conditions, right? And so like every region, buildings are designed with X amount of conditions, and so I think it's roughly like 3% out of the year that you're actually outside of those design conditions. And so regardless of what's going on, sometimes the building is doing whatever it can. It just doesn't have anymore. So I think of like Scotty every time I see that kind of thing. It's like it just doesn't have the power. Like, well, like, sorry, that you're 117 degrees outside right now, and like you weren't supposed to be that hot. Like, sorry, like your HVAC is running, balls to the wall, if you will, and I'm like, it can't, it can't, it just can't do it. That level of education is really tough. I was on Reddit the other week, and I was actually pretty angry about it too. At first, I wasn't, but then someone made a comment, and I was like, "Oh, okay, you chose violence." I didn't want to go that route, but I did. It actually deal with a two-pipe system, Tony, and they were like, hey, so I've got this sequence here, and I just need to I need to determine when I'm switching the heating and cooling. And everyone's like, oh, well, you do outside air temp. No, you do forecasted weather and this, that, and the other. And like after like 30 or 40 posts, and I went through them all, and I was like, hey guys, are we not talking about water temperature at all? Like, none of you have even mentioned when to bring on a boiler or a chiller. And like then I just kind of went through, and then someone was like, "No, you don't need to worry about that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right. Here, we're gonna. I'm gonna have to just school you at that point, like to like why that was even in play when you're trying to turn on a chiller or a boiler, like those, some of those old school things right there that we don't really come across anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but like in Charleston we have one here at St. Andrew. Actually, several of them are downtown in the churches, and there's just no to rip and replace. It would just be
Right.
astronomical, so they still keep them there. But we took over a Siemens building, and I asked the salesman, I was like, why are we taking over this two pipe system? Like, what are they not getting that we are? They're like, oh well, they've replaced three chillers, and I'm like, what do you mean they replaced three chillers? Yeah, there's something wrong with the controls and whatever.
Hmm.
And so I finally go to a panel and found the old control drawing, because I'm like, well, we just did whatever we had based upon the control drawing. So let me go find it. And then when I looked at all the wiring, I'm like, guys, the changeover valves are wired the same way. So they're either going to open all the way to the boiler, or they're going to open I'm like, we need to make sure that we isolate one. And it was never being isolated. So for like the,
Oh, so
yeah.
we're
So for like,
splitting the flow between the two
yep.
things. Yep.
And so I was like, guys, this is terrible.
Mm.
It's that kind of stuff that really needs to get, kind of just be brought out and taught again. I realize how much, mechanical knowledge is not there anymore. And that's because the dinosaurs of the industry, they don't necessarily want to be a leader. And they don't necessarily want to teach, and so we kind of need to do that. But I tell you what role do you believe community and knowledge sharing play in the success of HVAC professionals?
Well, um, I think it's important personally for me to give back because it helps me stay sharp and it helps me grow. And it's like the more you are being of service to others, the better things happen in your career. That's been my experience. When we talked a little bit about success earlier, that you know attitude of just look for ways to help others and to give back and everything else will work out, that's really served me well. I've started doing that about 5 years ago, and now if you take that stance and you do that at work and you're always looking for opportunities to help, then be prepared to do a lot of work because people like that. They like
Hmm.
to give you stuff. um, so I think it's important personally to give back from that aspect because people were nice enough to give to us. And from a company and brand standpoint, it's really, in my opinion, the best way to grow is to give back to the community. So,
What I tell you what, here's something interesting. What's your favorite mechanical system to work on? What excites you from a mechanical standpoint?
I like things that are simple. Um, we do a lot of packaged DX equipment with hot
Mhm.
gas reheat for dehumidification. That to me, that's simple. Although some people would look at that and see that as a very complex thing. Um, with everything that's going on with the regulations and the refrigerant and all the complexities, I'm a big fan of like a good old fashioned chiller boiler type system we were
Mhm.
talking about a minute ago, but we don't see those much anymore. Like even when you were talking about the two pipe sequences, I had to remember, back in my controls days when I used to see those often. Um, but yeah, so that would be my favorite would be, some chill water and hot water running through a system. It's very simple, not the most efficient all the time, but yeah, if I had one to choose, that would probably be it.
Is there a um is there a particular unit, like is has was there when you across your career, was there a particular brand that you always kind of like sighed or like moan, like knowing that you were going on a site, like, oh, I've got to work on these units again? Or was there is there any kind of equipment like that you were like, I really don't want to do this?
No, I can't really think of one. My career has been as a sales rep primarily.
Hmm.
So the
Okay.
equipment was going to touch, those were the products that we represented. And we tried to make sure we represented stuff that we were, we were behind and we enjoyed. Now, every manufacturer has their periods where they're running through some struggles and it causes some pain, and that's just part of the process. So we've had those experiences, of course, but you go out there and roll up your sleeves and you make sure the customer's getting taken care of, and make sure you and your company and your product line's getting taken care of as well. So
What I'm trying to think. What do you think is the most complex HVAC system out there?
I'm not sure. I would probably say VRF in terms of service.
Hmm.
Now, in terms of comfort and efficiency, it's probably top of the line. So, it's funny when you were saying that, I was thinking like there's no silver bullet to any of this stuff. Like everything's got their engineering trade-offs, right? So
Yep.
from a VRF in terms of the piping, the controls, the valves, all that kind of stuff, it's more complex, but it's more efficient. You get better control. You get, you could put it in places you can't put a typical chill water system sometimes. Great for renovations. So that would be more on the complex side, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I've got I put a little ductless split up here above my garage, and that's now my office. I have an older house, and so I was like, well, I need a new office. So I renovated this portion, and I was like, well, I don't have any real ductwork up here, so we're gonna just put a little unit out there. I agree with the VRF system. I think one of the things I've seen is there was an installer mechanical that actually installed the wrong branch selector boxes in the wrong locations, and I was like, oh, that's not a fun time. Let's see, what other thing could we talk about? You did a little bit of you one of the things that I remember when I saw that you were working, you were helping the community during the time of one of the what was the hurricane that came across? What was that called? Floyd, was that it?
It was Hurricane Helene.
Helene, okay. Can you talk about your time like right after Hurricane Helene and what you did to kind of help the community out?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So, when the hurricane hit, first of all, we were shocked. We didn't know we were going to get the hurricane was not the real problem. The problem was the flooding afterwards. Well, I guess that was from the hurricane. It was a real problem, but our town here is in a valley. It's in the worst possible place if you're going to have a flood, and the French Broad River, which is the river that runs through our area, completely crested more than it had ever, 22 feet or something like that. It broke a 100-year record. Lots of the town, our downtown area got devastated, and a lot of the Asheville community did. Our personal home was fine. We're a couple miles up from the river. We lost power for a week, but that was no big deal compared to all the other stuff. So we were in a position to help others. So we were helping others down in the city by bringing them water, helping to charge their phones. We had a generator at the time, but everything was completely gone. It was just crazy in terms of like, there was nowhere to get food, there was nowhere to get water, there was nowhere to get power, there's nowhere to get gas for your car, things like that. So we were able to give back. And one of the ways we gave back too is, as a content creator, my wife and I are both content creators. We were able to get online, and at first we were like, how can we help? And then I was thinking, well, we got HVAC TV. What does that have to do with, I can't put this content on there. And I'm thinking, you know what? It's part of my life. It's part of HVAC TV. Studio got washed away in the flood. Like, we did lose our studio. It was down in the city. So I'm like, that's part of the story. We're going to tell it. So we turned the cameras on and we started doing that. And we got so many people that said, hey, where do I give? Where do I give money? Do you need food? Do you need water? Do you need this? We were able to get that information out real time. So that was a real blessing and a real treat. When we talk about like the importance of giving back, it helps keep your sanity too during times like that. We have 3 teenagers, so we were able to do that part of it. We were able to go down to the city and help. And my teenagers my kids were so good, and they were down there helping out like crazy. And the good thing about having the video camera, being on camera, is you can be on camera while everyone else is doing the hard work, like shoveling. So you can give back in that way, which is a little bit easier than picking up a shovel, which I did do a lot of that personally, but yeah.
Well, good. I mean, I'm really glad that you dug your heels in and, you use the resources that you had, to help the community. Because sometimes it's not just about money; it's about,
Right.
service and even reaching the community at large to have people come and chip in. So I've got one more question before we do a final send off.
Okay.
What do you think the future of HVAC TV is, especially with the vision that you have? Where do you see that going in the future?
Man, that's a great question. I was just talking about this with our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and what we're trying to do is focus a lot on factory visits to use this. We've gotten good enough to where we can go to a factory. Like we were at Johnson Controls, what they call JDAC, which is their um, Advanced Development and Engineering Center in Yorktown, Pennsylvania. It's 250,000 square feet of just chillers on testing. I mean, just like a content creator's paradise. So we were able to use the channel for that, and I think we're going to do more of that. I think that's going to be the future, is doing more of the actual in the factory, walking through how the equipment's made, things like that. We do some job sites too. Job sites are a little tougher because a lot of people don't want you out there doing video, which is understanding because there's some liability on their standpoint. So I think that's where the future is, more of the in-house factory tours.
Well, good. I'm glad that you. I'm looking forward to see what you continue to offer, because I think that you bring a lot to the HVAC community at large. And whether or not you're directly focused in controls, a lot of people in controls look up to you as well. So, Tony, I really do thank you for the time that you have taken to out of your day to talk to us. So I really do appreciate that.
Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to listening to it too. Thanks, guys. I
All right,
appreciate
thank you,
it.
Tony. Have a great
Alrighty.
one. That concludes another episode. Remember to stay curious and get back for success. I'm Charles.
I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem. You're kind of considered the Tony Stark of HVAC.